After having reviewed both the original trilogy and the future trilogy of the Ratchet and Clank franchise, as well as Rift Apart, I can now review some of the lesser known titles, and what better game to start with than Ratchet Deadlocked. This game doesn't even have Clank in its name, but trust me when I say it's the best Ratchet game I have yet to review. Until now, that is. It's a controversial game in the series for sure, but one that's nevertheless gained a loyal following, and it's unfortunately the last Ratchet game to keep the edge of the PlayStation 2 era. Ratchet Deadlocked turns 20 years old today, and I will celebrate its anniversary by explaining what makes it so good, even though it doesn't follow the usual Ratchet formula.
After making his fortune selling cigarettes to children, Ratchet went on to pilot a tanker ship for Zexon.
A week later, Ratchet got drunk and crashed his tanker into the ocean world of Equados.
Ratchet Deadlocked was made by Insomniac Games and released exclusively for the PlayStation 2 on October 25, 2005. It's even more fittingly titled Ratchet Gladiator in Europe, given the emphasis on gladiatorial combat. In either version, Clank has been removed from the title, which is because he's more in the background this time around, whereas Ratchet takes the center stage on his own. Considering this and this entry's more spin-off-esque nature, it's impressive how well it reviewed, getting an 81 on Metacritic. It is quite a bit lower than the ratings of the original trilogy, however, and there were many who didn't like the direction this game took. Even so, its sales numbers are also impressive, sources claiming it either sold over 2 million copies or close to 3 million. I'll assume the answer lies somewhere in between, like 2.5 million, which isn't too far behind the rest of the trilogy. You probably know the drill by this point. I recorded Ratchet Deadlocked through its HD port on PlayStation 3, and this one looks especially bad, so just know that all the stuttering in these glitchy models aren't problems in the original version.
Watch as Ratchet and Clank take on Ace Hardlight and the Exterminators! They saved the galaxy 3 times over, but how long can they survive in the zone?
Ratchet, Clank, and Big Al are chilling on the starship Phoenix before they're suddenly kidnapped by some robots. They're sent to the shadow sector of the Solana galaxy, where they're forced to compete as Team Darkstar in Gleam and Vox's illegal game show Dread Zone. As Ratchet fights his way through deadly gladiatorial challenges, Clank and Big Al provide support from the sidelines and try to figure out a way to escape with their lives intact.
Report to B-level for disintegration.
Yes, sir.
Wait!
Sir?
On your way there, tell the lab to set up a focus test. Find out why this stuff isn't selling.
I'll get right on that, sir.
As you can see, this Ratchet game doesn't have galaxy-wide stakes, so the drama comes from whether our main characters can survive their situation. It may not feel as dire compared to before, but to be fair, Ratchet, Clank, and Big Al are wearing collars that can detonate whenever Gleam and Vox feels like it. This also explains why they partake in this illegal game show in the first place, as they kind of have no choice in the matter. Then again, Ratchet embraces it, at least at first. I like that he's excited by the prospect, as he is a trigger-happy Lombax, and I like that Clank tells him not to get too excited, reminding him of their predicament. The stakes may not be the highest, but the game is nevertheless exciting due to its more action-packed nature and mature tone. Ratchet Deadlocked is definitely the edgiest Ratchet game, and while I didn't care for the tone back in the day, I've come to appreciate it over time, especially since most of the newer games feel so childish in comparison. Edginess may backfire in excess, but this game handles it tastefully. There are some swear words here and there, but they're bleeped out, which honestly makes their occurrences funnier. And there may be dark humor with jokes about people dying and whatnot, but that's a natural evolution of the original trilogy's comedy. This game retains the satire which that trilogy is known for, and returns to themes of consumerism that were so prevalent in the first two games. This game show is all about creating competent gladiators so that their image can be sold to the audience, which is why the boss reactor is introduced through a commercial, and why Gleam and Vox tries his damnedest to sell merchandise of the highest ranking exterminator, Ace Hardlight. It's funny then that Ratchet's rise to fame prevents Ace Hardlight from being profitable, even when the commentators lionize Ace while demonizing Ratchet. There are trading cards of the exterminators, which even you can collect as you 100% the game, along with cards of Gleam and Vox and his weird little pet. Being the awesome game that it is, Ratchet Deadlocked has the coolest portrayal of Ratchet. For one, he wears these sick armors while blasting enemies in style. There's even a cheat that has him fire the dual Vipers like a gangsta. His attitude is even more badass. The way he talks back to those who slander him is filled with so much confidence and charisma. It helps that voice actor James Arnold Taylor has modified his voice to be more gruff in line with the edgier tone of the game. He sounds awesome.
These guys obviously don't know who they're messing with.
Ratchet also has a nice little arc in this game, going from being excited about participating in the deadly game show where he can earn more money and fame, to refusing to be Gleam & Vox's new cash cow. I love that he prioritizes saving everyone involved in the end, becoming a hero to many other heroes who were also forced to compete against their will. Unsurprisingly, I don't have as much to say about Clank, but although he takes a back seat, I'm glad he's still there to give instructions and whatnot. Also, he manages to net a hotbot, reinforcing how much of a Chad he is. There's actually more to say about Big Al, as he has more memorable moments throughout this game. He manages to remove Clank's collar at some point, which unfortunately gets him shot by Ace Hardlight, and it's a sad scene. Fortunately, he doesn't die, later returning as a cyborg, which is pretty cool. I love that Big Al came along to become more of a main character. It makes sense, considering his proficiency in engineering, giving Ratchet the sick armors he wears, not to mention his combat bots Merc and Green. These two are essentially Clank's replacements in this game, not that Clank can be replaced, but Merc and Green do make for a fun duo. I like how their opposite personalities clash, Merc being confident and battle ready, whereas Green is more of a doomer with PTSD. I enjoy their quips, and they will sometimes go off on funny tangents.
I've seen war. Yeah, I remember the BlatherCon war. I was 3rd Division. We were on routine patrol and out of nowhere we were hit hard. There was fire, smoke, robot parts everywhere. Oh man, some of these kids were just 3 days out of the production factory.
Main villain and Dread Zone host Gleam & Vox can also go on passionate tangents while he's trying to sell stuff to his audience. This guy has a lot of personality for a generic bad guy, but to be fair, that just describes your average salesman. I like how he'll put innocents in danger to boost his show's viewership, while making light of the situation. A good example of this is when he disables Planet Stygia's shield generators so that Ratchet has to enable them before it's hit by meteors. Vox may be an asshole, but you almost have to admire the lengths he goes to for ratings, his final act having him blow up his own battle station along with himself. He feels reminiscent of Chairman Drek from the original Ratchet and Clank, and both are perfect villains for their respective games. Ace Hardlight is the secondary villain, and he used to be a hero, but has become blinded by fame and glory after being taken advantage of by Gleam & Vox. He's an interesting character, and I like that he doesn't exactly get a redemption arc, but warns Ratchet not to become like him. Ace is what Ratchet could have become if he too didn't develop, so it's a good thing that he did. As for the other exterminators, there's not much to say about the Eviscerator, as he's mute, but Reactor and Shellshock are fairly fun characters. I like how Reactor used to be a sentimental math teacher and would be rejected by Courtney Gears until he got rich off of Dread Zone. The scene where he slaps a kid who wanted a high five is also funny. It's edgy slapstick done right. Shellshock is literally Arnold Schwarzenegger, at least in the way he talks, which is what makes him memorable.
Hey Juanita, are you wearing Ace Hardlight underwear?
He's apparently a big fan of the Harbinger too, so that's based. Dread Zone's commentators Dallas and Juanita are also based. These two are very funny together, even though Dallas's sexual harassment towards Juanita can be a bit much, but I still love the guy. The way they try to defame Ratchet is hilarious, displaying photoshopped images as well as normal ones in distorted context. I especially love the scene where Big Al falls for their propaganda.
Who can forget these graphic images of baby seers smothered in radioactive waste? Little Coco never had a chance.
How could you? What did little Coco ever do to you?
What?
Their commentating before and during challenges is great. I especially love it when Dallas goes off script.
After recalibrating the lightning collectors, the next step was to hack the control points on the shield's core. Bingo, bango, the shields are up. Too bad the station's core took a direct hit. Too bad the radiation's everywhere. Too bad I said bingo, bango. Who writes this junk?
I have to give a shout out to Captain Quark as well, who doesn't show up until the ending, but while that's a bit of a bummer seeing as he's my favorite character, it made for an incredible joke.
Ratchet, Clank, it's me, Captain Quark. There's a nasty rumor going around about heroes being kidnapped, but don't worry, it's baloney. I mean, come on, nobody came to capture me, right? Just imagine making a show about galactic heroes without Captain Quark! Ha!
Dr. Nefarious and Lawrence also appear at the very end, albeit after the credits, and it's a funny scene that reminds us that they're still relevant.
You said we were coming within range of a space station!
Well, we were, sir. How was I to know it would suddenly explode?
Ratchet Deadlocked's writing is really good. The premise is simple but effective with a natural plot progression as Team Darkstar rises through the ranks of Dreadzone. The darker tone allows for more freedom in the comedy department, with funny characters that elevate the clever satire. I find the plots of the original trilogy more compelling, so I can't say Deadlocked matches its writing prowess, but it's not too far off. The gameplay is where Ratchet Deadlocked differs the most from its predecessors. It essentially turned the popular gladiatorial arenas from going commando and up your arsenal into a full game, which sounds monotonous on paper, but it actually turned out really well, because Deadlocked's challenges are quite varied. It definitely takes more after Up Your Arsenal's Annihilation Nation, which not only featured an arena, but obstacle courses as well. In Ratchet 2 and 3, the arenas were only maxi games and bigger games, and it being the main selling point of Deadlocked unfortunately sacrificed some other gameplay aspects I expect from the series. Of course, it retains the focus on combat, but that's the main gimmick by a wide margin. The original trilogy also emphasized platforming and exploration, gameplay elements that are present in Deadlocked, but to a much lesser extent. Lock-on mode being enabled by default highlights this shift in prioritization, as it's more rigid than the third-person controls that allowed for smoother platforming and exploration in prior games. It is possible to go back to the classic form of movement, but why would you when this game is tailor-made for lock-on mode? I can't imagine using the fusion rifle especially without it, as it requires a more precise aim to hit targets, especially those that are placed vertically compared to Ratchet. Deadlocked giveth and Deadlocked taketh away, because while I definitely miss some of the staples that put certain other Ratchet games in my top 10 favorite games, it allows for the combat to be amazing, maybe the best that the franchise has to offer. It's action-packed and fast-paced, not to mention explosive, which was the case in Ratchet 2 and 3 as well, but everything has been intensified. The lock-on controls are on point, and the weapons feel more satisfying to use than ever due to the added detail of dropping bullets that audibly clink on the ground. Deadlocked also has an elaborate weapon mod system that enhances them even further. Alpha mods improve a weapon's existing features, such as firing rate, ammo count, and how much experience it gains from killing enemies, whereas Omega mods give weapons additional abilities like for example slowing enemies down with freeze, poisoning them with acid, or damaging multiple at a time with shock. Certain mod types are more useful than others, and the morphing mod can actually hamper the pace since morphed enemies don't always count as dead ones. Nonetheless, these mods make the already fantastic combat even better, and it's a shame this specific mod system never returned in a later entry. Despite being the most combat-heavy Ratchet game, Deadlocked only features 10 weapons, which is half of Up Your Arsenal's weapon roster size. You'd think this would be a bad thing, but it actually isn't, as every weapon has its use, feeding into the more streamlined nature of the game. Deadlocked starter weapons are great, definitely some of the best in the series, especially the dual Vipers, that are probably my favorite rendition of the blaster type weapon. It helps that you get to wield 2 at a time and that they're the only weapon that can be used on grind rails. The freeze mod is perfect for the dual Vipers, since they fire so rapidly and even just a single bullet will initiate the effect. The Magma Cannon isn't my favorite shotgun type weapon in the series, but like any other shotgun, I quite enjoy using it. As for purchasable weapons, the B6 Obliterator is probably my least favorite weapon in the game, which makes sense given that it's also the cheapest one. It barely has any ammo and it's slow compared to the combat's rapid pace. These issues can be alleviated somewhat with alpha mods, but other weapons are still preferable. The Hunter Mine Launcher is a much better bomb launching alternative as the mines stay on the ground and can thus act as traps, and you can even explode enemies while running into them. That said, this weapon also suffers from being slow and having a fairly low ammo count, so it's not my favorite either. Turrets also take a bit to deploy with the mini-turret launcher, but their effectiveness makes me prefer them over the mini-turret glove in Ratchet 2 and 3, especially with the shock mod which extends to other enemies. The Arbiter is a trusty rocket launcher that's about on par with most others, and the fusion rifle might be my favorite sniper rifle due to its power and precision. The most powerful weapon is obviously the Harbinger, which is essentially this game's Rhino. It's a bit slow to fire, but I guess that doesn't matter since it decimates everything in sight. I feel like Arceus using their signature move Judgment every time I use it. My favorite weapon, however, is the Scorpion Flail. This is the only melee weapon aside from the Omni Wrench, and lock-on mode conveniently turns off while using them. Just imagine how rigid they could have been. This freer movement makes the Scorpion Flail so satisfying to use, especially after charge booting, allowing for swift directional changes. There's nothing sweeter than getting up close and personal to bash enemies with a big spiky ball of death, particularly one that cracks enemies like ice using the freeze mod. 20 years later, I would still say the Scorpion Flail is the best melee weapon in the whole series, at least if we ignore the Razor Claw's awesome ability to jump up walls. Whereas level 8 was the max in up your arsenal, in Deadlocked the weapons can go up to a whopping level 99. This is insane, but though it might sound like an intimidating endeavor, it actually takes about as long to reach level 99 with every weapon in this game as it takes to reach the max level of any other Ratchet game. Well, it depends on the game's length, and to be fair, Deadlocked is shorter than most of the mainline games, so level 99 might actually take even less time to accomplish. In challenge mode, you breeze through several levels in no time. 10 levels might take less time than one level in other games. Reaching level 99 was a fun concept that makes Deadlocked stand out, but I understand why later games would mainly stick to level 10 as the max. Deadlocked's max level also stands out because it gives every weapon rainbow colors as you fire them, which is very cool, if a bit gay. Speaking of which, Merc and Green are nice support bots that help you out in fights, even turning bolt cranks for you, or shielding you while you turn them yourself. The only downside to them is that you often have to press a direction on the D-pad to command them, which can be very finicky. You'd think I'd only need to press it once in hacking situations, but no, I need to press it for each individual orb they hack, which is just ridiculous. Also, as nice as Merc and Green are to have, I'd much rather take Clank, who actually enhances my movement. Instead, I have to deal with Ratchet only being able to walk until I unlock the charge boots, which is definitely a great movement option, but it's not ideal to use everywhere. Though it lacks some of the gameplay elements that makes other Ratchet games so fun, Deadlocked does actually feature grind rails and vehicle segments. This game features lots of grind rails to my amusement, and you can shoot and dodge enemies while grinding, adding a fun layer to it. Some of the grind rails may go on for too long, but it's better than having no grind rails, I'll tell you that. It's nice to have some vehicles as well, the Landstalker being the main attraction. What a cool tank this is, just look at its menacing design. Facing them as enemies without one can be pretty terrifying, especially when they drop bombs on you. I prefer dropping bombs on them, and shots for that matter, but I'll admit the enjoyment of using them does get dragged down by how slowly they walk. This game's hovership also feels slow, and I'm not the biggest fan of its missiles, as they sound annoying and often go astray. The Puma might have even worse accuracy, but it's quicker and more fun to use. The hoverbike is the most agile vehicle and I enjoy doing ring races with it. The normal challenges usually have Ratchet walk from point A to B while destroying anything in sight, and it's a very fun gameplay loop, even though it can become repetitive due to the lacking gameplay variety. There are some challenges that emphasize platforming, such as when you're climbing the Tower of Power, which is a nice change of pace. Many other challenges lock you into arenas, highlighting how fun the combat is. There are some unique challenges that I love, particularly the one where you speed up as you kill enemies. It's the peak of Deadlocked's insanity, Ratchet running and gunning faster than he ever has. Even the slow weapons gain a good rate of fire. Deadlocked's challenges are typically very fun, but they wouldn't necessarily be enjoyable without actual challenge. This is where the difficulty settings come in. There are 4 difficulties to start with, ranging from really easy to really difficult, and you unlock the Exterminator difficulty after beating the game. This just might be the toughest Ratchet game, and I find that the more difficult it is, the more fun I have with it, since it forces you to utilize every weapon at your disposal. Even the Hollow Shield launcher becomes a valuable weapon as a result. It helps that the shields are better than they were in Up Your Arsenal, where the Hollow Shield glove felt relatively useless. I 100%ed Deadlocked on this footage run, initially playing on Hero difficulty, then Exterminator in the first challenge mode, and finally Couch Potato on the last challenge mode to speed up the process. Yeah, I did sacrifice fun for efficiency, but to be fair, I had already played through the campaign twice in a row, and the game does become repetitive, so best not to drag it out too much. Also, I needed to clean up my remaining skill points, and there's no way in hell I'd be able to unlock some of the boss skill points on the hardest difficulties, such as killing Reactor in just half a minute, or killing the Eviscerator exclusively with a Scorpion Flail. I love the weapon, but it does leave you vulnerable, which it simply can't be on the higher difficulties. There are 5 boss fights throughout this game, and they're quite fun to fight on the higher difficulties. Shellshock isn't particularly hard the first couple of times you face him, but he becomes tougher to beat as your ammo dwindles at the cathedral. It's cool that he uses bouncer bombs against you, which are effectively destroyed with the magma cannon. Something I find odd in regards to pacing is that while Shellshock gets multiple encounters, including a big one in a unique area, the other bosses only get a single arena fight at the Battle Dome. Maybe it has to do with time constraints, or Insomniac just got lazy. The other bosses have fun patterns nevertheless, even though most of them are relatively easy. Ace Hardlight might actually be the easiest boss fight, making you wonder how he even became the top exterminator. Then again, he constantly heals himself while wearing a shield, which is in line with his underhandedness. Ace may be easy to beat, but he's nonetheless my favorite exterminator to fight, getting blue-balled by his health bar which never seems to deplete until it does, and I like that you can destroy his homing missile with a shield. The final boss Gleamant Vox is easily the best and hardest boss battle in the game. You have to constantly be on the move as he launches powerful attacks, many of which you can neutralize with your own weapons. I particularly love bashing about with the Scorpion Flail in every direction as these drones surround you. This final boss is such a great way to finish such an explosive campaign, and it's definitely one of my favorite bosses in the series. The campaign might be over, but it's always possible to dive into challenge mode, or you can indulge in Deadlocked's entertaining multiplayer modes. I'll admit I haven't spent that much time with them, though I have dabbled in some Dreadzone Online on PC recently, and it's a lot of fun. What's even more fun is Deadlocked's co-op mode. That's right, Deadlocked was co-op 6 years before All for One came out, and it's so much better, mainly because Deadlocked is a better game in general. There's just something about being able to play a great Ratchet game with a friend that's so wonderful, even if your controller might suck. Just like with Up Your Arsenal, I bet the inclusion of multiplayer sacrificed the quality of Deadlocked as well, but I don't mind it as much in Deadlocked since it's more of a spin-off title, and getting to play through the whole campaign with a friend is a better alternative than your usual PvP anyway. For what it is, Ratchet Deadlocked's gameplay is really good. The combat is fantastic and might be my favorite in the whole series. However, this quality unfortunately came at the expense of the gameplay variety that I love so much about other Ratchet games. I can't really use that as a slight against Deadlocked, since it's not trying to be your typical Ratchet game, and what it does go for it executes really well, but I do find the balance of great combat, platforming and exploration to be superior, at least when that balance is perfected. Up Your Arsenal skewed the gameplay more towards the combat while weakening the other aspects, but its combat wasn't much of an improvement over Going Commandos, and kind of pales in comparison to Deadlocked's, so I might actually consider Deadlocked's gameplay overall superior. I still favor Up Your Arsenal's gameplay in terms of enjoyment though, along with its writing and presentation. Given that Ratchet Deadlocked is the darkest and edgiest Ratchet game, the visuals have followed suit with a grittier look compared to before. This fits the tone the game is going for, but leaves the levels feeling somewhat lifeless and uninteresting. I guess the point is to make the worlds you visit seem abandoned and desolate, but just because it's intentional doesn't mean I have to approve. It's not as if all of the planets are lifeless either, since you'll sometimes encounter local alien wildlife, but they function more like obstacles than as inhabitants that enrich the environments. I suppose that's the case for most levels in the original trilogy as well, but there was something about those that made them a whole lot more memorable. For one, their colors were more varied and vibrant, making them more inviting and visually appealing. Plus, they tended to have more unique details that differentiated them, especially those from the first two games. The levels in Up Your Arsenal weren't quite as interesting, as that game was held back by its multiplayer mode, and Deadlocked's levels often feel like glorified multiplayer maps with enemies scattered across. At some point, you revisit the iconic planet Orxon from the original game, which is cool, but it doesn't really feel like you're going back there. It just seems like any other empty husk used by Dreadzone for their game show. In spite of my issues, the general look of the game is still very good, and it has aged well with its cartoony art style. A cartoony game ought to have cartoony character designs, which Deadlocked has in spades in spite of its darker tone. Ratchet's model looks as good as ever, even though his head looks a bit goofy sticking out of his new armors, but he looks awesome with the helmet on. It's kind of impossible to screw up Clank's simplistic design, and Big Al still looks very sexy. New models like Merc and Green look very cool, and you can change their look up a bit, but honestly, their other head alternatives pale in comparison to their default, and there's only one color palette that makes them look cooler. Gleeman Vox's head being based on a shark is dope, and Ace Hardlight's look sells his jock demeanor. The other exterminators look pretty menacing, and the kids are very goofy looking, as they should be. Juanita is quite the hotbot, so it's no wonder why the funny looking Dallas is such a simp for her. These cartoony characters have fitting voices, and I've already explained why James Arnold Taylor does such a great job at voicing Ratchet in this game, giving him such a badass attitude.
They made a mistake bringing us here, Clank. Now they're gonna pay for it.
Exactly.
Again, there's not much to say about Clank, but David Kay gives him that iconic robotic voice we all know and love him for.
Well, since you asked, I have 16 terabits of tri-directional asynchronous bandwidth on my core CPU.
Christopher Hatfield also gives a charming performance as Big Al, who has such a fitting nerdy voice.
Whoops, looks like we've got a feedback loop in the visual matrix processor. Hold still a second.
Lawrence's voice actor Michael Bell is primarily the main villain Gleeman Vox in this game, and he truly shows his range by going in the opposite direction of Lawrence's subtlety to sell Vox's much enthusiastic showmanship.
We'll sell Ratchet action figures, Ratchet sports shoes, Ratchet deodorant, Ratchet breakfast cereal, earmuffs and cologne, soft drinks, hard drinks, energy drinks, breath mints. You get record deals, movie rights, reality shows, video games, and commercials.
Commentators ought to have pleasant voices, and that's exactly what Darren Norris and Nika Futterman give to Dallas and Juanita respectively.
Thank you, Juanita! Your searing dose of verbal abuse was refreshing, I can't even tell you. Ooh, and the whole mommy baby thing, sexy. Baby needs a changin'.
The way Dallas pronounces Juanita's name is so memorable, and Juanita's Spanish accent gives her a very clear identity.
That's right. Take him out, Team Darkstar. Destroy him. Destroy his family. Make him cry into his next life. Yeah!
The game definitely wouldn't be the same without their commentating, and they may repeat some of their lines, but I will never get tired of hearing Dallas shouting,
"Run, Ratchet, run!"
Deadlocked's presentation prioritizes maximizing the joy of blowing shit up, with the likes of camera shake, rumble, and huge explosions. The sound design also contributes to this, with sounds of loud explosions and satisfying weapon noises. David Berchot's soundtrack complements the bombastic tone with plenty of loud and high-octane compositions. Some of my favorites include Advanced Qualifier, Landstalker Stalking, and The Grinding Chase. Despite the game's guns-blazing attitude, there are a few calmer themes every now and then, my favorites being Dreadzone Station, energy collector, and escape. Unless you die all the time, the track you'll hear the most is Challenge Complete, which I never get tired of since it slaps so hard and sounds like I've accomplished something. Deadlocked has a great soundtrack, but I must admit that several themes blend into one another, making them somewhat difficult to distinguish. I thus prefer the original trilogy soundtracks, which had more varied music for each level. David Berchot still cooked regardless, and I prefer Deadlocked's music over his later work. Ratchet Deadlocked's presentation is quite good, but is lacking compared to prior games. It looks good with a tried and true art style, but the lower saturation and generic level designs lessens the immersion factor that has made other Ratchet levels so memorable. This sequel does however retain a healthy dose of cartoony character designs that are voiced fittingly, and the soundtrack is great, if a bit weaker than the composer's past work.
Say what?
Ratchet Deadlocked is a really good game that doesn't quite match the greats. It's quite well written with a simple but effective story that continues the funny satire that the original trilogy is known for. It successfully turned a maxi game into a full game while avoiding overstaying its welcome, offering plenty of fun and varied challenges that highlight the excellent combat, which might be the best in the whole series. The characters both look and sound unique, and the soundtrack slaps. Though the writing is mostly unproblematic, it doesn't reach the heights of its predecessors. That goes for the gameplay as well, which lacks a variety of gameplay styles that made other Ratchet games so fun. The presentation also suffers a bit from comparison, the visuals being rather dull and the music not being quite as memorable as before. You might have noticed a pattern throughout this review. Ratchet Deadlocked does just about every aspect quite well, but falls short of the original trilogy for the most part. I did state that it might be superior to Up Your Arsenal in terms of gameplay, and its combat is easily the best of the series up until this point, but I still think Up Your Arsenal edges Deadlocked in the writing and presentation departments. Because of this, I'm giving Ratchet Deadlocked the really good but not quite great rating of 8.25 out of 10. This is just a quarter point below Up Your Arsenal, as well as Tools of Destruction, so I don't find it much worse. Considering the unusual nature of this game, that's really impressive, and goes to show just how good the spin-off is despite not following the tried and true Ratchet formula. Would I have preferred to get another typical Ratchet game instead? Probably, but I am glad that a game like this exists. It was a different avenue for Insomniac to explore, and I'd say it was a successful experiment. It's certainly a better alternative than the other Ratchet games that have tried to be different. I'm Arcadon, and hopefully, you'll see me next time!